What's up, everyone? We are back for another episode of the 21 AVAs. Today we're going to Goose Gap. So Goose Gap is nestled in between Candy Mountain and Red Mountain, part of the Yakima Valley AVA and part of the larger Columbia side AVA. What are we drinking today, Caleb?
We got some Goose Gap wines from their luxury stuff, the Vero and the Gooseridge Cabernet Sauvignon 2021. Super
Oh,
cool.
nice. 21 was great vintage. Love that one. So yeah, should be fun. Well, I think we should get some wine in the glass.
Do it. Let's do
All
it.
right. As Caleb's opening up that bottle, I'm going to go over a couple of the details about Goose Gap AVA. So, established in 2021, about 8,129 acres. Just a small amount of that is planted. And when I say small, I don't mean super small. This is primarily Gooseridge's estate. At one point, I'm not sure if it's still the statistic, but at one point, I know Gooseridge was the largest continuous vineyard in all of Washington. One of the interesting things about the Goose Gap AVA is that it runs on a different parallel. So it's mostly planted on the northeast facing slope. So a little bit different aspect. Typically, you're planted on a south-southwest slope. So what do you think about that, Caleb? Why would someone plant on a southwest facing slope, and why would you plant on a northeast facing slope? What are the two different decisions when it comes to viticulture, other than that's just the way the land rolls?
Yeah, I mean, there's that. But the big thing, if you have the choice, is your northeast facing is going to give you that early dawn, light in summer. It's going to evaporate the dew. And in the afternoon, it's going to be indirect from the heat of the sun. So you're going to be away from that blasting afternoon 3 p.m. heat effect. And if you want that, then you go on the southwest face, right? If you're in a warm environment, you don't need that necessarily dawn sun. You want to be warmer. You're going to put your fruit on that southwest face. That grand face of Red Mountain is that southwest face, right? It's one of the reasons why it's so hot is because it does face the afternoon sun. Whereas this, right, Gooseridge, which is neighbor to Red Mountain, as you drive through Highway 82, the highway that passes you by Red Mountain, you're looking to the north to Red Mountain and to the south, that's Gooseridge. Now, it basically is the South Appalachian to Red Mountain, a neighboring appellation.
Excellent, excellent. And then directly north of Goose Gap would be Candy Mountain as well.
Directly east,
Is
and
that
sort
east?
of in the north, sort of in the northeast pocket. It's the northeast pocket. Yes, north, but also east. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. What's in our glass? Beautiful white blend. I think this is
Yeah.
Rhone
Yeah.
varietals. I love a good Rhone white.
I know. And Andrew's been at this winery, been making really solid wines for a long time. And this is their reserve. I think, yeah, Grenache Blanc, Roussanne, and Viognier. Super cool.
Yep. I'm already
Pretty.
like, even the aromatics, I'm smelling almost that oiliness that you get from Roussanne and Viognier. You could almost detect it on the nose alone. It's got a lot of stone fruit.
Yeah, a lot of fruits, lots going on. There's a nice complexity there. It's a pretty attractive. It's very clean. It's not oaky, so it's very fresh and fruit centric and very approachable.
Yeah. And just as a heads up to everyone, I'm controversial on this one. I do not chill my whites. Occasionally, a Riesling or a Sauvignon Blanc, but when we're talking Rhone varietals, cellar temperature is where I want them at. That's just where I think they express themselves the most.
Yeah, I too. I yanked this out of the cellar at 60. Chose not to put it in the fridge. Me, I think I'd like this at 50. I think maybe even 45 degrees. Just out of the fridge, 20 minutes. It's perfectly great. I like my whites a little colder.
Okay. All right. Agree to
It's a nice
disagree.
wine. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Rhone whites. Like, I'd rather a Chablis, I'd rather a Riesling, I'd rather a lot of other wines. But what I like about this is it's pretty, it's really clean, it's really straightforward. I really struggle with white wines from Red Mountain because I find it's such a great hot spot that the whites to me have always fallen short. And yet here, just a mile as the crow flies, a mile from Red
Exactly.
Mountain, right? Maybe 2 miles at the most. You're looking at a wine that has some freshness and good build, and yeah, is much more approachable to me than that southwest facing hot site that Red Mountain offers.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of whites grown in particularly warm spots either. But I don't think we're going to be friends anymore, Caleb. I'm sorry. I don't know if we can do any more of these. You don't like Rhone white blends? I live for Rhone whites. Don't get me wrong. I love a good Chablis, Chablis, if you want to call it. But I love Chablis. I love Loire. I love those racy whites. I have a soft spot, particularly for Grenache Blanc. we're going to be tasting a couple Grenache Blancs throughout this series, and for
All
me,
right, all
it's just
right.
it's an it varietal. Okay, yeah, but yeah,
You're gonna have to convince me, man.
okay,
I've yet to flip out about a Grenache Blanc.
okay. Challenge accepted. Let's see what happens.
All right, let's see what happens.
All right, so let's pull up a little bit of information on Gooseridge Winery here. So I made some notes on here.
My sense, what's fun is you can drive like right through the middle of this appellation. It's kind of neat on the highway as you leave the
Hmm.
Tri Cities and you go west. You're pretty much, skirting the entire northeast edge of it
Yeah.
in your car without any effort. As you look to the southwest, you get to know this appellation up close.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of those signature appellations. I think as you're driving east from the west side, from Seattle area, and you come through and you start to really get into the Tri-Cities area, you really have that iconic beginning of like driving through the middle of the vineyards on the freeway there. I mean, you've
Yeah,
got Red Mountain on your left, and then it flows into some of the like Yakima Valley vineyards that are right there on the right. I don't think they're classified as anything. And then you go right into Goose Gap and Candy Mountain, and it's just
yeah,
super cool. It is really, it kind of sets the tone for getting into wine country. You see a
yeah.
little bit of wine grapes grown up the Yakima Valley, but it's not the same. It's not the same. You're not, it doesn't feel like you're driving through the vineyards quite like you are right in this section of the freeway.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. I agree. You get into the Yakima Valley and you see this sort of beautiful quilt. Like right now, the orchards are blooming out and the cherry orchards, and you get this quilt of cherries and apples and grapes. But down there, you get vines and vines and vines, and it's really, you're right. It's a cool.
Yeah, Caleb just made an interesting comment that makes me want to think about, just giving a little nod to Washington wine country right now. I know a lot of people like to wait until the vines are growing or until your summer gets a little further along, but there is something really special driving through Eastern Washington this time of year. So as much as I love grapes and grapevines, their blossoms are not near as pretty as a orchard of cherry blossoms or pear or apples. And so, yeah, if you have the time to make the trek through Eastern Washington right now
Yeah,
and just a scenic drive, it's the time of year to do it. In a lot of ways, I think it's super, super cool.
yeah, it really is. It's so, cherry blossom beautiful. It's a huge thing in Japan. It's a beautiful thing in Washington.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then as it gets a little further in the year, I think one of the really cool drives is like the Palouse. When you start to
Oh,
get that checkered, especially when things start to dry out a little bit, and then you have the green wheat fields, and then the dry wheat fields side by side. It is like driving through nature's quilt, just like you were saying with Yakima Valley. It's
it's
gorgeous.
one just staggeringly beautiful. Staggeringly beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, popping back to Gooseridge here. So, family-owned winery. It's owned by the Monson family. Deep agricultural roots in Columbia Valley. That's a really nice marketing term that we love to use in wine all the time. Is we have roots in Washington. So, yeah, it's pretty.
That's right. Yeah, these guys really threw an enormous amount of effort at their landscape here, and they've done a lot. They've produced a lot of wine on behalf of Saint Michel at this facility.
Yep.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of vines. I remember Jerry Bookwalter joked with me. He said it took about 6 hours, he said, to drive around the entire vineyard, around the perimeter with them in second gear or in first gear. That's how long it takes. That's how big the vineyard is.
That's a big vineyard. I don't know the exact acreage of the vineyard. That's something I should know. But one of the
It's
cool
like a
things
thousand
that,
acres or so.
how many?
Like 1,000. In fact, it was more. What was interesting is they boasted. I remember when we were at Bookwalter, they boasted that they had more acres in the ground than Walla Walla.
Than the AVA of Walla Walla. Is that what you're saying?
What they said. There's a
That's
lot.
crazy. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And because they have so much vines planted and so much acreage going on, they do some really cool projects. So they don't just focus on wine. Gooseridge also has a distillery. I believe they do a vodka that's pretty darn delicious, but I have to double check on that. They also are a big pioneer of canned wine. Cascadian Outfitters. They do canned wine, which is a controversial topic for a lot of people. I'm a fan of boxed wine. Not saying that I love the wine that's in boxes, but the idea of packaging with boxed wine, I think that that's a really cool thing. The bag doesn't oxidize. And so if you're talking about a
Yeah.
wine that you're planning on drinking within the first 6 months, you can pour out one glass at a time over the course of 6 months and really enjoy yourself without any damage to that wine. It's also
Yeah.
lighter on shipping costs. So I think across the board, there is a big place for boxed wine, and I think that it should be on more shelves. But when we're talking about canned wine, I think it's great for two particular things. One is on the boat, because
Yep.
we have hot Washington days out here in Eastern Washington, and we have three fantastic rivers, and I do not want to break a bottle on my boat, and I don't want to drop a bottle into the river. Let's keep our rivers clean. So cans are crushable, both drinking and in the hand. And I think the other thing that canned wine is great for is for hiking. I do not want to tote around a 3-pound bottle. So if I can peel pounds off of my backpack, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And, they're great for parties on the grass. You're not going to break glass on the grass. You got a can, you got a single serving. So you're by the poolside, no glass to break.
I will do a quick correction here. I don't think that a can is a single serving, and I think that's where people can get into trouble with canned wine. It is at least 2 glasses. We're talking about a 12-ounce can, and your typical restaurant pour is somewhere between 5 and 6 ounces. So please be aware of that. If you drink 2 cans of wine, you are drinking a bottle of wine.
I mean, the 250s, yeah, but it might be 2/3. But yeah, to
Yeah.
me, it's like, one person,
Yeah. No,
one person, one serving.
Mom didn't raise a quitter.
Atta boy.
So let's talk a little bit about this wine. What are you thinking? Are you not convinced that you love Rhone varietals yet?
Yeah, look, man, it's a good wine. Am I in love? No, it's pretty. I like it.
Your East
Maybe I'm
Coast
not
is
in
coming
love.
out. Oh, what do you mean?
Well, what's the matter? I mean, come on. I got my opinion.
Yeah. You know what they say about opinions. I think it's tasty.
Yeah,
I think it's a good
really good.
representation of Rhone whites in the Yakima Valley. I think maybe because I didn't chill mine, I'm noticing a little bit of the alcohol. Let's look. What's the alcohol percentage on here? Did you see that, Caleb? 1 is what I'm seeing on the label. So that's not incredibly. That's not high.
That's bad.
No, I think 10 years ago it was pretty easy to make a wine under 14%. Or around that, but with the way things are shifting, it's really hard to make a wine that is phenolically ripe under 14%. And I think as much as we don't like these super high alcohol wines and low alcohol wines are trending, I think, what will always control the trend is good tasting wines. And so I think that needs to take the priority over the.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on the phenolic ripe thing, but yes, it's well proportioned. What I'm getting out of this wine is it's getting prettier even now as it opens. 10 minutes in. I mean, it's 15 minutes in. It's like, wow, there's this jasmine sort of tone that's coming into this wine, which is really nice. Really nice. Wasn't there in the beginning. It's opening up.
Yeah, no, it is getting prettier, and I am getting some of that white flower. Yeah, it's
A little bit of that
I love
lilac.
lilac.
It's more pretty, and it's good. Well done.
What fruit are you getting on here? Are you getting like stone fruit, like apricot, peach, pear?
Yes, a little bit of that hot climate fruit. I get pineapple, I get star fruit. I love star fruit. I get apricot. I get like a little bit of that candied pear, a little bit of quince. It's nice.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much for the Gooseridge team for providing this. Shout
Yeah.
out to Tiffany. I really appreciate the couple bottles you sent us. They sent us a red as well. I know you popped it up already. I've got mine open. Should we move on to red?
Let's move on to red. 2021, one of the hottest years of all time. Not because it was amazing wine, but because it was high temperatures too. Screaming hot June. We had high temperatures in Tri-Cities of 115. And what these hot years cause, like 2015, like 2007, and if you get a really high heat in June after flowering, what happens on the plant is a plant makes little grapes. And it just can't grow the grape very well in the beginning, so the grape stays stunted, a little miniature. And grapes that might be, thumbnail size are now pinky nail size, so they're shrunk maybe by half, and you get bauer vintage.
I remember when I first started at Book Walter, Caleb, you had that conversation with me.
Full disclosure, we were coworkers.
Yeah, we were once friends. It was crazy. No,
Now we're
and
just
so
video enemies.
Yeah, when him and I were together at Book Walter, he was talking about the 15 vintage versus the 16 vintage, and 15 was the hottest year that we had on record in Washington. Okay.
16 was warm, kind of like it. What happened with 16 was 16 had this weird event, which almost never happens to us, which is it had thunderstorms that came through in June, right after flowering. And so that's a great story because where in a hot, dry year, you're going to have a tiny grapes. If it rains after flowering, you could have big balloon grapes. And so in 16, we had clusters that were this big. The clusters were this big, and the grapes were big. So you had this enormous yield. And in 16, we had a big production. You can look at the stats from Wine Commission or whatever, but you get
Yeah.
not just do we make a lot of wine in Washington State, but every vineyard made 10 to 15 to 50% more than they thought they were going to make, because what we normally do is we go up to a vine and we count the individual clusters, we run all our statistics, and we get a sense of what the yield is going to be. But if the cluster is 30 to 40% larger, you're going to get 30 to 40% more wine.
Yep.
And that's what happened in 16. So we had a big yield in 16. Now, the wines are still delicious because we're good winemakers, and the vintage was warm and ripe.
I love that. Yeah, I baited you into that perfectly because that's the exact things I wanted you to say there. That's fantastic. And so one of the things, and I might be remember this wrong, but it's good to get a refresh on here. One of the things that you were just mentioning when you get June water and you get this plumpness. So I think maybe you explained this to me, like cell division happens at that time in terms of the fruit set on there. And once the cells divide completely, the grape grows, but you only have X amount of cells, right? Once it
Right.
gets past that fruit set stage. And so,
Right.
so what a wet year does for it is it provides more of that cell division at that critical time when the total berry size can get bigger. Is that
That's
correct?
that's exactly right. You
Okay.
said it. I won't repeat it. And so the analogy is, it's kind of like when you go to the store and you buy balloons for a party. You want either small, medium, or large balloons. And so that's what you're getting. If it's a hot, dry vintage, you're going to get small balloons. No matter what you do to fill that balloon with air or water, it's only going to be a certain size. It can't be a big balloon. If you got a big balloon, it doesn't take much to make it look big. It's easy for that balloon to end up really big. So that's what happens in June, is you just as the plant decides and makes either small, medium, or large balloons that get
All
filled up
right.
with water as a result, and years goes on.
Bingo. They get filled up with water. So when we're talking about small berries versus big berries, your flavor and your tanning comes from skins. And so when you have a less juice to skin ratio, you're going to have a more intense and powerful wine. So 16, I'm not saying 16 didn't produce powerful wines, but it did have a little bit more of that liquid coming out of it just because of bigger berries. And that's one of the reasons why the gallons and the tonnage went way up in 16, is because bigger berries. It's more fruit set across the plant in general. But the way they prune things is that there's only so many. They pick how many clusters are going to come out with your pruning decisions in. And so that sets the tone for what the vine is going to do. And then water at key critical moments is going to determine the size of those berries. So pretty
Yep.
cool stuff.
Yep.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit. This is going to be one of those topics that is super not fun to talk about. So I love the idea of this wine, but mine is corked. So Gooseridge
No.
uses natural corks. I am still a huge fan of natural corks. I'm willing to take the gamble. Caleb and I are going to disagree on this
So
immensely.
I've got a cork in mine, but mine's not corked. What did you mean it's corked, right? I mean, like most of us know what a cork wine is, but it's
Are you baiting me now? I think you're going
I'm
to
baiting you,
describe it.
dude. I'm
I
baiting
think
you.
you're going to do a better job of describing this than I am. But for me, a corked wine, so there's a thing called TCA. It's a cork taint. I don't know the full word. What's TCA stand for?
Trichloroanisole, but don't remember it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, TCA is enough. So if you've ever popped open a wine and it smells a little bit like cardboard or wet sock or that kind of thing, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. It's not a fault of the winemaker at all.
Nope.
It is a choice by all wineries whether they're going to use a natural cork or a screw cap, or what's popularly used with a lot of wineries these days is what's called a DM cork. It's a composite cork that has basically been clean, sterilized, and then pressed back together.
Yeah, just like a champagne cork. Looks like a
Yep,
champagne cork.
it does. It does.
Yeah.
But I have had a lot of corked champagnes. So,
That's because they have the little disc at the bottom.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's a bummer. It's rare. It's more and more rare in the industry. There's a lot of ways to treat the cork. It has nothing to do with the winemaker. It's not a winemaker fault. It's just a random event. And just because you have one cork bottle doesn't mean the next bottle in the box is going to be corked. Not at all.
No. And one of the reasons why I am a huge fan of natural cork is because, one, I am a diehard traditionalist when it comes to wine. Even though I just talked about boxing canned wine shit. What am I doing? Being totally talking against what I just... Anyway, forget that beginning part. I am a huge fan. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the
Love to point
pop.
out where I'm in total in conflict with
Yeah,
myself.
yeah. Self-conflict is a common occurrence with me. It's kind of my MO. Yeah, so a natural cork is just a single, you harvest off the cork tree, you take the machine, it plugs it out, and you get a beautiful cork. There's different grades to these. There's different choices that are made in terms of a natural cork. I don't know. With DM corks, it's built to age and breathe in a specific way throughout time. Is that right, Caleb? Like they have different ratings, different thicknesses that push against the walls more for longer aging, shorter aging. But the chance of cork taint happening in a DM is about approximately what, Caleb?
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe 1 out of 200,000 kind of thing. I mean, but
Yeah,
it's
it's just I've yet to see it. I've yet to have a
yeah,
bad cork of a
yep.
DM.
And I will say, as much as I just said I'm a fan, there is something that's incredibly disappointing about storing a wine for 20 years when you got your bottle of, Smith Lafitte and you laid it
Brutal.
down forever, and it was a splurge purchase back in your 20s, and now you're 45 and you're married and you're celebrating your kid's, I don't know, 10th birthday. But yeah, you're celebrating your kid's birthday, you pop open this
Yeah,
cork or this bottle and it has this cork taint on there. It's super disappointing.
brutal.
I think, oh yeah, give us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. It really supports these videos. But what do you guys think about wine faults when they happen? How do you pick them up? What is your perception on there? And if you'd like to see a video with Caleb and I diving into wine faults, I think that would be super cool. So if that's something that interests you guys, let us know in the comment section. We'll be sure to read those and check on them and do something fun on them. So I'm going to pour some of the white wine back in here just because that's, yeah.
Yeah. My
Yeah, how's the cab on your
bottles.
side?
Yeah, my bottle's nice. It's got a great richness. It's got that power and that red, crunchy, which means like almost like tar and black licorice and nice barrel aromatics, some smoked oak, and it's it's very very nice. It's a Cabernet Sauvignon based wine, and I don't know what the percentages are. I'm reading the label to see if I can find out for you right now, and I don't see anything. It's at least 75%. Um,
Why is it
it's
at
a
least
young
75%?
because American law says you have, if you say this on the front label, you have to have at least 75% of that on in the wine. You can put other things, but you got to have at least 75% of that statement.
What is the 75, 85, 95 rule in Washington wine?
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking
I believe 75% you need to have in order to name it varietal.
about? Yeah.
I believe 85% you have to label it an AVA. And I believe 95% you have to label it a vintage.
Dude, that's a cool stack. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all true.
Yep. Yep. So that just tells you what winemakers can do a little bit. When you get a bottle of Cab or Merlot or Cab Franc, we do get a little bit of wiggle room. I say they get a little bit of wiggle room. I don't make wine. I don't want to make wine. I like drinking it. I fuck things up. Yeah. But I do think that having that little bit of wiggle room is cool. And it also helps. Sometimes you have a really powerful vintage and you have a little bit softer vintage, and that little bit of 5% that you can blend back and forth, I think is a cool tool. I think all of this benefits the wine consumer greatly. So don't feel like you're
Yeah.
having wool pulled over your eyes. It is for the benefit of putting the best wine out there.
Yeah, I mean, folks, please don't get upset. Like, we're just blending wine, Max. Not like we're adding weird things to this. This is just a blending exercise. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, it reminds me when I was at a tour down in California. One of my favorite wines, California Ridge. They said in their Zinfandel, one of their recipes was they always put to the max level a young vintage wine into the Zinfandel as they bottled it because they wanted that bright that little punch of bright young fruit. So they put a 6 month old Zinfandel into a 1.5 year old Zin as they bottled it at 5%. I thought that's a cool trick. To be straight up, this could be all cab. It's this wine is a great example of 2021 because it's got that a little bit of scorched, a little bit of road tar, a little bit of that intensity. Um, God, a little bit of grilled meat, right? Like that smell of really, really hot steak.
Like
That
like on a barbecue or like a
Yeah,
yeah
on a
yeah like
barbecue over
barbecue.
a fire,
Yeah.
and to me that's really attractive. It's also a sign of youth. So these wines are young. So these wines, structurally, this wine's going to last a decade and be, I think, more interesting in 10 years than even today. Lovely wine, well made, and 2021s, if you can bear it, put some away. They're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna be powerful wines in the future.
Yeah. And I think, once again, just my philosophy on things is try it first. and see what you think of it then. Because if you lay it down for 10 years and you try it and you open it up and you're like, this wine's really good. You don't have a reference point. You want to
Yeah.
know how the wine has changed and evolved. So I think I'm a big fan of tasting at a domain, and you can get an idea of what the wine is, and then you can just lay them down if you want to. But if you're ordering this online or picking this up in a wine shop, I would suggest trying one first and then laying the other ones down, just so you have that reference point. It is good to know, and you can start to dive into how wines evolve a little more.
Yeah, you nailed it right there. And the whole thing that I like about what you said is that it's all very personal. You've got to make your own decision, right?
Yeah.
This is all about what you like. Do you like this wine? Do you even want to buy another bottle? Do you think it
Yep.
should be aged? I mean, I just had a really high scoring $100 Bordeaux
What was it?
from Total Wines and More. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't think I need another.
Yep.
It's good. I mean, it's good, but super extracted. I'm like, what is going on? This isn't my style. If I would have aged that wine for a decade if I hadn't opened it up and been like, I don't know, should I get another?
Yep.
But it was a 2019
Okay.
good Bordeaux vintage, but you got it. This is all about you. It's not about the scores. It's not about the critics. It's about you. Buy the
It
wine,
is.
taste it, and then decide if you want to age it.
In Washington, I love the 19 vintage. For me, it was a little bit cooler
Mm.
vintage. You get a lot of bright freshness. Caleb and I once had the pleasure of drinking a 2009 Palmer at about 2018, 2019, so about 10 years in. And we popped this open. This was a 100-point wine by Robert Parker, I believe. And then we tried some other second, third, fourth growth Bordeaux's and stuff at the same time. And I didn't love the Palmer. I thought it was good. That was solid. That was the first 100-point wine I'd ever tried. And I think that's some of the problem with scores sometimes. Don't get me wrong. It's a good reference point. It's a good base point.
Sure.
But you got it. Like, who's your reviewer? Who's your demigod that you follow? That kind of thing. I know Caleb did a really cool series on what wine drinkers, how a wine drinker buys wine in a wine shop. And you trust your
No, a
distributor,
winemaker. How a
winemaker. How does
winemaker buys wine at a wine shop. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he's all about the importer, which I think is a great reference point on things. And I think it's the same with reviewers. When you find a reviewer that you like, you can kind of follow their taste buds and they will not lead you too far astray. People tend to like the same things. And so, but yeah, no, I didn't love the Palmer. And I think that my expectations were so high
Yeah.
trying to taste a perfect wine that I don't know what could have actually got me there and saying, oh my God, this is it. And so it's like, I don't watch movie previews before I go to the movies. I don't read about reviews. I go in completely blind. And I think that's one of the better ways to experience entertainment. And I think wine can really be entertaining. And so sometimes
Yeah.
it's good to go in blind and just check out what's happening. So just my 2
Yeah,
cents
I
there.
agree with that. I agree with that.
So on that note, cheers to Goose Gap. Cheers to Gooseridge. Caleb, thank you again for joining me. And yeah, we'll see you on the next episode.
Cheers, y'all.